Public comment, anything non-agenda items? Meg, are you one of those public comments?
Good morning.
Have you signed in?
No,
Have a signage.
I will.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
And one quick reminder, so we don't interrupt, Meg, let's turn off phones and make sure we're all fed. Okay,
Good morning. My name is Meg O'Leary, and I am here this morning to give a brief update on the Big Sky Governance Study. Some of you have been hearing about this, and many of you were at the Joint County Commission meeting this past week, so it will be a little bit of a repeat. I'll start from the beginning anyway. WGM Group, in partnership with M2O Group and Echo Northwest, is conducting a study to explore governance options in the Big Sky community. And this may include incorporation as a municipal government. We had our first public meeting on.
Right on time, sir. We should go.
I'll be right here. I'll be back, but I gotta make sure my phone is working.
On
and
September,
off.
on September 24th at the Wilson, we held our first public meeting, and that meeting was all about introducing the project. We didn't teach anybody anything. We introduced the project because this is a year-long study. There are about 6 phases to this thing. And that September event was phase 1. And from that event, we also did several meetings with community service providers, including all of you. Johnny and Harry were there to give the lowdown on operations. And from that event, the Echo Northwest team is taking and analyzing all the finances. So we have to understand what's going on in this community financially. And then there's also the analysis of what's going on operationally on the governance side. So what's going on now, that's getting analyzed, and there's additional community engagement happening. In fact, tonight at 6:15, we're going to do an informal conversation where we actually are going to start laying out some different pieces of learnings that we can provide. Because this thing is taking a year, it's a little tricky because people want to know answers now. And we know what we're hearing frequently is we want to know about what this is going to do to our taxes. We want to know what it's going to do to the services provided. And we also want to know, we want a voice. What's the deal? We need a voice either in Helena or at the 2 counties. And that's what we're uncovering, more community feedback as it relates to what the community wants. Be on the lookout for all of our notices. We've got a website. I'll leave a flyer here. I'll get it to whoever takes notes to put it in the notes, and I will sign in. So thank you. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Meg. Thanks, Meg.
Yeah.
Busy gal this last week. Seen you everywhere. Okay. Okay, any other public comment? All right, we'll go through conflict of interest declarations. No? None. None. No. Okay, none for me. We'll jump into the consent agenda. Always give Terry the floor. Drop any conflict of interest for you today?
Am I what?
You have any conflict of interest today?
No, I have not.
All right, just double checking. We'll go to the consent agenda. Terry, always give you the floor so we don't get halfway through a motion before we.
Well, we're in October already, and we're going into the 4th quarter of the year looking pretty good on expenses and revenues. And if it holds, we'll hold them all for the rest of the year.
Great.
Because this is usually the quarter where we're out of whack, and so far we're looking pretty good. Expenses are not as high as we anticipated so far.
You know, flows seem to be down. Flows were really low, which does impact, especially on the commercial rates, correct?
Yeah.
So revenues go down with that.
Well, the revenues came in at 930, pretty good. So we're
Great.
Like I said, going into
I was surprised to see just how they taper down historically. Okay, that being said, anything else on the consent agenda from the financial reports? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Peter and Dick second. Discussion?
I have a quick question. Is Adam's report part of the consent, part of the manager's report in the consent agenda, or is that?
We'll talk
About
about
the manager's report, it's the irrigation portion that you
I
guys
just wanted to make sure.
didn't put it in the wrong spot.
Okay. No,
Oh, okay.
I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss an opportunity to point out something.
No, and it's last month they had said this is kind of an important meeting in October. You're wrapping up the summer for irrigation, you're wrapping up the flows, you're wrapping up, of course, your revenues, you're going into the fourth quarter. But specifically the operators reports, I think are usually get a little more attention right now. So good call. Okay. Anything else? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Consent agenda. Jump into committee reports. Al, you're the, I think you may be the only active, but you're the most active one of the bunch. Let's talk Northwest Energy.
Just quick update, we've received draft COS and draft documents to go to the county to begin that process for the boundary lot realignment. At the same time, we've discovered we've got to clean up another lease that we have, because as that property changes its configuration and its description, we've got to update that lease as part of the process. So we're trying to do a thorough investigation to make sure there aren't any other issues that we just need to deal with, not anything coming up that's an issue from the perspective could impact the deal, but just other areas that can be cleaned up because of the change in lot configuration. So that's where we are, and hopefully by next meeting, we have that wrapped up and we've got the boundary realignment in with the council.
What do you think? We'll make it by the end of the year?
We put a wager on this, or?
Yeah, the Christmas party dinner.
Hope, it would be nice. I just don't know, once we do get things in the county, how long.
Yeah.
Process.
So we have to have it done by December 31st.
I didn't think there was a deadline on it.
The deadline was notice to the SOA,
PSOA.
which direction we've already done that. So
Then the next step is to give them notice that that's completed. And we have a meeting on the schedule with, the people. Yeah, with these.
Let's make us. Anything else on that?
Another 5-10 years, we'll have this wrapped up.
I think we're getting close to it.
Hey, Dick, I know you missed the BSOA pond subcommittee, but I was going through the committees and saying, man, that was 2 years ago we started the pond subcommittee.
Exactly.
And this is a byproduct of that subcommittee. Was it
either like 2 days before Christmas or 2 days before.
the Christmas Eve day, Christmas day before Christmas was around here, and it wasn't pretty. So we made it through that. Think about it, where we're at, this being teed up. This will be a great win-win, very similar to the BSCO. So it's a refresher that it was all wrapped into the ponds. So, all right, Canyon?
Oh,
Anything? I'm just
No,
looking at
Mace isn't here yet,
Okay,
and later, so.
all right. Flatiron.
So we just extended the PUD with Gallatin County for another 7 years, so that just gives us more time to sort things out. We're starting to do some more planning on the Gallatin County side, so we're interested to see kind of what happened. Well, that doesn't really matter for Gallatin County, but we're definitely watching the annexation discussions going on, and you know, we should expect that we'll be interested in that path for the Madison County portion of 5 years.
And there, of course, annexation's later in the agenda.
Correct.
And I think annexation, we're just talking about it, you heard us. Annexation, I think we need to maybe make a top bullet point overall, not just for coal smoke, but the annexation process, given I think we have 3 or 4 of these on the radar right now. I know yours is there and you're waiting. It's like kind of a lineup. I think it'd be a good idea to set, maybe after the next meeting, set a schedule to meet based on the annexation summary that we get from Susan. Susan's on the call right now, we're in the meeting, and kind of spoke for her last time, talking about conditions that would go along with each one of these. And I think it's probably the time to start identifying conditions for each unique property and where they are, whether in the district, out of the district, as far as water, sewer, everything. got a matrix we're kind of working through or a grid to figure it out, but I still believe in these committees. I think they've been productive, although we've stalled on a couple of them. And I think that we're about to push through on that as well.
Yeah, if it's appropriate to get another flat iron committee meeting scheduled.
I think the annexation will be the key,
That's what I.
because the conditions we're talking about in the subcommittee meeting are going to be a factor in that, being the water and so on.
And then anything that comes out with the flow-based agreements, of course, we're also.
That's key. Okay.
Ryan, you're talking about conditions from us or the county?
Conditions from us. Each one is so unique, you'll have an issue where Flatiron will come to the table with water. And Spanish Peaks has their own water. And then you'll have coal smoke going, annexing in with different conditions than those two. So then you'll have a Firelight that may petition for annexation that has neither of the above, or may have their own water, may have their own sewer disposal. It's a little confusing. And I think for right now, we're just trying to take in order, but at the same time, look at them globally.
I'd also like to get an update on the conditions the county has. So we don't get ahead of the ball,
Okay.
The specific water and sewer conditions.
all the conditions.
Yeah, so we're starting to work, that's part of kind of what I talked about, starting to get in Gallup County. So we're working, there's 65 conditions on the Flatiron PUD. 2 of them are very closely related to the big scale water and sewer district. The other 63 are related to wetlands, traffic, all kinds of different things. So we're definitely starting to work through those now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yep.
all right. Anything else? Flatiron? Okay.
Thank you, Brendan.
You're welcome. Compliance committee. Oh, yeah, going.
Pilot study continues and we're working with A2S. They're gonna put out a informational mailer sometime this fall.
Fog's wrapped into that as well,
Fog, we had a mailer that went out in the spring, but it is, yes.
but it is wrapped in.
Those mailers have been going out with every building cycle, so.
The fog is because of the commercial component to it, the vast majority of that impacting, I think, from commercial. Is that something that you have a plan down the line, maybe for more outreach with the commercial entities, restaurants in particular?
I think so, yeah. We're kind of in the gathering phase at this point.
Okay.
And, yeah, planning to bring everybody on board.
Policy and benefits?
We have a meeting at the end of this month. Slowly but surely getting everything together, so we're in the final drafts of all the stuff. So I've sent some stuff out for preliminary discussions with staff. I've already met with admin, but the committee meets the 24th.
Okay. Anything else on that? No, Mike. And CIP. Who is on the CIP development committee?
Mike and Jared and myself, and we got Ryan Graff that's on there. So we've got the bones of it made, but we haven't met yet to actually start getting projects listed. You'll see a little bit of it in Ryan's presentation later. So what that looks like.
Okay. So we'll have basically a laundry list of things that are being proposed or considered for capital improvements over a period of time. Yeah.
You'll have a 10-year CIP for water and sewer. We'll have a fleet maintenance schedule as well. And then we'll slowly but surely start integrating a reuse CIP as well as we expand our reuse infrastructure and start building that. So it lists out all of our projects. We'll start working on it this year. BizRad's changing their timelines for applications to better suit us that have the physical years instead of calendar years, and do all that stuff. So like right now, we've got the Mid-Mountain Booster Station on BizRad CIP. It's a known project that's moving forward with them. So we know at the same time we're doing our budget cycle, what projects we've got coming forward for that next year.
All right, anything else on that topic? Action items, wow. We take our time. Go to Old Business Center. Scott, you have plenty of time. I'm worried that you wouldn't.
Plant construction,
Got it was a nice, event on.
ribbon cutting.
That was.
How many of you have made the ribbon cutting? Because you know more than I do about the condition of the site at this point.
I think the group, Meg, wouldn't you say it was about the same size as the fires? Maybe about the same size as the post office ribbon cutting. They should have had a little shuttle bus that just took, Meg could drive it, each different place. But they were all about it.
Which one, buy it? No fire.
Well, they did give you a fire sample. I mean, you smelled a little smoky if you're too close, but that was a nice demonstration.
I'm sorry I couldn't attend, but we had a lot of folks there and I understood it went really well. Daniel Tracy passed away, fellow that built the majority of what you saw Sunday after the last board meeting, so about 3 weeks ago now, just tragic. RCI is reeling and he largely moved on to the West Yellowstone construction project. Mike is doing a fine job of, batting cleanup for Daniel, but just tragic. I mean, the guy led the construction for 3 years and with his wife Lisa, and so that hurts, but other than that, the project is still progressing. They've had some concrete issues in the last month with their batch plant, so they've passed some Kenyon Noble batches in front of us, and we got them approved, so they're going to use Kenyon Noble until they figure that out. So this week you'll see Kenyon Noble concrete going in over there, trying to finish up the phase 2 process basins. And then, the largest hurdle still remaining is to start up the new digester and equalization basin and get the new generator installed. Still a lot going on. And Adam, I had a really thorough write-up. Somebody brought it up previously in his report, and I don't know, Adam, if you want to talk at all about startup. And it's not all been sunshine and roses by any means. We're struggling a little bit, and a lot of that is trying to bracket lowest flows, as Brian pointed out. Not a lot coming into that plant right now, and especially overnight, and so that's a struggle to ramp everything down to that degree and then ramp up for the peak diurnal during the day and not have an EQ basin and not have a digester to waste foam to, and just.
Yeah, James has been working with us diligently to try to implement a scheme where we can kind of manage our oxygen delivery in a more efficient manner. Like Scott said, the loads get really low in the night, and those blowers are sized for, the design basis on the plant. And we just get into a position where we're over oxygenating the waste stream and trying to just balance that. And then subsequently the phosphorus removal component as well. So it's going well. And luckily we got a good team and love working with James. We're getting there, but slowly but surely.
And James is up here today. We talked about yesterday, Zach Freeling coming up and with James, you and I, and brainstorming on that. I know part of that is to run some air off into basin 3. Once we have that new equalization basin, that's the old SBR built, we might be able to use that to store some of the day peak.
Meter it in,
leave it back at night.
keep the load a little more consistent.
Yeah, we're doing that at the another MBR plant where you have to build these things for the 20-year time frame. The day you start them up, especially overnight flows, can be.
You want to go over the irrigation portion too, since we're talking about the operation of the facility and startup?
Sure. Where's the mouse at? It's right here. Yeah, I'll be brief here. We'll just touch on some of the irrigation stuff. We had a really good irrigation season. The team worked really hard getting rid of water and, working with Boyne and Home Line Company and make sure we're on the same page, and, it was a good effort. As you can see from this first plot here, pond one is sitting at its lowest average value, dating back to 2013. You can see that as you're driving by, looking at the ponds are really low. We've had some work we needed to do down in there, on our intake structure, as well as some of the pipe penetrations. So we've done some needed maintenance in those ponds. There's some of the sealing work we've done on all the pipe bands. There's some plots. You can look at the report. Johnny put my whole report in here. Just kind of showing last 3 years of data. Kind of looking at overall volume sent up the mountain, relatively kind of all in the same ballpark. But again, these biweekly irrigation group meetings that we have with Rich and John and the Boyne guys have been really helpful, and the district is grateful for those partnerships. Here's a plot showing kind of all the daily flows throughout the season. You can see we peaked at, just over 1.2 million gallons. That was late September. We had some on and off periods where we utilized fresh water, we utilized reclaimed water. We had some pumping interruptions, as you've heard in past board meetings. So it was a little bit of a tumultuous season, but we got to where we wanted to be.
So this is the combination of reuse and
This is just reclaimed water.
just reclaimed water.
Yep. I didn't put any of the pond water, but we did just shy of 7.7 million gallons out of the Middle Fork through our irrigation system this season. So we successfully utilize that water right, and that'll be something we continue to do over seasons to come, just to make sure we're balancing this water as demand for our high quality water increases over the years here.
And our new filter for the fresh water
Worked great. Yep.
worked great.
Yep.
That's a huge accomplishment. It was always a struggle. Sammy hated that fresh water.
Well, there were some challenges, and those the East Away Pond project complicated things a little bit. We had to suck out 5 to 6 foot of silt and sediment out of our intake structure, because that interrupted some pumping operations, which was an unforeseen cost, but
That's great though, you get that up and going.
yeah,
That's all.
it was real good. And like I said, we'll continue to utilize that water right moving forward. So
This includes horse pasture.
this is everything. Yep. Okay. Here's a plot just kind of showing the last 3 years of flows. Take what you want out of that, but overall, yeah, good year on that sense. I want to just kind of discuss where we started in the season in regards to our nitrogen concentrations in these ponds and where we ended. And it really just speaks volumes to the change in treatment levels that we're seeing out of the new plant. We're sitting, 30 milligrams per liter, the end of ski season to, sub 5, at the end of the irrigation season. So that really just needs to be made clear in the community how well this water is being treated, and the investment that the community made. And the work was awesome. So
Yeah, being humble when you talk about, it was a good year. This by far, everything we're seeing from ag gross irrigation to TN, it's exceptional. I mean, this is extraordinary. This is kind of the
himself on the back, but he's busted his tail to.
That's a great year. And again, the irrigators meetings are just so helpful.
they're crucial. It's great. Sure.
Well, that was the graph when I brought this up earlier that I wanted to make sure was brought up, because I think that we've talked about what this plant and what the efforts of the district can do, and
Yeah, and there's another plot here that I'll show you that really puts it in perspective. We don't have a permit. We've never exercised any sort of discharge to the Middle Fork. We have a nutrient management plan though. And so we couple these pond concentrations with volumes delivered to the course, and that shows up in our nutrient management plan. So this plot, you can see the 108 pounds per acre per year, which is our value through our approved nutrient management plan to the state. And this season, we were over a factor of 2 lower as compared to last year, nearly 2.5 times lower. So again, just speaks volumes to the quality of water coming out of the WRF and what it does to the loading on course.
And this is during plant startup, not normal operation that's happened after we get it stabilized. This is startup. So we do expect that trend line to stabilize and show longevity, with that, so.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, remind me with the three ponds, which are which?
So the big pond near Ace is pond 1. The pond right behind us here is pond 3.
And two is.
Pond 2 is currently offline, because we're looking at, getting estimates for relining and dredging that pond. Because there's a little bit of sludge buildup in there, we kind of want to start that pond off on a fresh foot, so.
But when you're done, that should be the same. It's
Definitely, yeah, it'll be another 8 million gallons of storage, so the only way it's affecting operation right now is just we don't have that additional 8 million gallons right now, so.
This was the meeting you'd wince on, and a lot of times would say, well, wait a minute, what about the irrigation pond? What about this? And all of a sudden you'd be going into the winter with some loading that you just didn't really, you have to be pumping constantly. This is really something that's been a goal for the last decade.
Time this report was done, we're going into the winter with 7 months of safe storage, 7.5. We targeted 8, which is 210 days. So that'd be like your worst case scenario in a really long winter. So, those are, check that all off the box in October and we're set up and ready for winter storage and operations.
So looking forward with here in the next few weeks, we should be seeing our new pump skids for YC1. And so that'll give us a little bit of play time for starting up those new skids and the controls on them. If in the event we push pumping into January, February, we're gonna be just fine.
Is the system pumped out now? Or is it blown out?
The compressor is being delivered today.
Got it. What was being done over on hole number 4? Is that anything to do with the district? I saw
To my knowledge,
backhoes and
is it
piles of
is
dirt.
it Pistons or?
I think that has to do with their wetlands project.
Got it.
And that stuff.
So that's Kristen who's
That's
on right
Kristen,
now.
yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's getting underway.
And then we're also working on, we just met this last week for the purple pipe slip casing that's going underneath the highway over there by Wilson.
Got it.
That's actually being done currently right now.
Yeah,
What a
that
summer.
starts this week. Yep.
What a summer. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was a great season. Kudos to everyone on the team. It all worked out well, so. Until next year.
You raised the bar.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
What do you need?
I need the mouse, sir.
This?
Yeah, I need the driver, steering wheel, appreciate it.
It's Shrop.
Anything else about the plants or reuse questions?
You just dropped something.
I'm sorry.
I got it.
Moving on. Wastewater facility plan.
You
We're
don't.
still looking for data, I think, from the smart covers. I don't know, Peter.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Data for the hydraulic model on the collection system.
We're gonna be working on that this week to try to find those last 136 pumps needed to get that hydraulic sewer model going.
Okay. And then you'll have finally a complete collection system hydraulic model that we can use for developing CIPs and looking at development connections and just making sure that your collection system can move the flows it needs to down to the plant. Reuse management plan, we have a workshop on October 24th with district staff. Just an internal, what's in that report. Till then, the nutrient management plan that Dow did in 2011 still rules, but eventually we'll be able to get the reuse management plan through legal and DEQ, and that'll be the governing document. And that has lots of CIP projects, future projects for reuse in it.
Yep.
And then you'll also have your water master plan, same deal, getting the model dusted off. We did that for you several years ago and just updating that with developments that have occurred since. And laying out a water master plan for 5-year CIPs, 20-year CIPs, tanks, PRVs, pipe. So you're getting all these pieces and parts taken care of and teed up for so that you'll have CIPs that you can go back to and dig out projects and give them to BizRad or queue up for SRF funding. It's just meant to set the table so that you have these plans in place and clear path. Reuse booster station, PER, so, we were fortunate enough to be selected to finish the design of that. We've been working a lot here recently with Spanish Peaks and Gallatin County on nailing down the site for that booster station. We are committed to breaking ground next year to keep our fingers on the $750,000 grant from Montana SRF. Not a lot more to say about that.
Just the scope and fees on the engineering, because it is part of the BizRad CIP. We didn't get it in enough time to get it in this board package, but I will bring that forward this next month for board approval to move forward with the engineering services for the booster station. We just got a couple more things we've got to tee up and confirm so we can continue that project to move forward.
King, I won't spend a lot of time on that, just maybe this year, gonna give you a broader overview and what's going on there, and I'll fill in any gaps that Mace doesn't hit, if you have any questions on your side of that project. And Ryan Graff is here, so I'll go into the rate study. He's gonna present on that.
We're gonna do Canyon first and then we'll let Ryan speak.
Thank you. That's to help Ryan. He's double booked, and so Mace will go first.
Yep.
Do we want to do this now or you may finish?
You can finish, tie in your update with the Canyon update.
Actually, I think I'm pretty much done. We are wrapping up the report for DGS. Probably for the Boeing litigation today. The deadline is today, so we'll see what happens next with Cottonwood. Go from there. Budgets are all in generally good shape other than the Canyon work. But that's because we're in a milestone gap here where we're moving off the pre-60 and now going to get you a scope and fee for finishing, or at least taking the design to where we can go get a construction manager at risk with WGM. So we'll get a scope and fee together for that and put that in front of Johnny and negotiate it. And just a reminder that that doesn't come out of your reserves, that it comes out of the BizRad, 12 million, to be reimbursed. Then Mace has to lead that charge on the Canyon side where we're assessed to them as well. And they'll lead, I don't know if they're moving ahead this week with scopes and fees or we're a month off.
Yeah, I can give the Canyon update if we're ready.
I think I'm ready. If you're ready.
You said Ryan Graff is online?
So Ryan's gonna go after you because
Okay.
he's got a schedule.
You can backstop me if I say anything wrong on numbers, but if you all heard the pitch during community week, we've been communicating a $55 million project number. That number can go up or down depending on issues we identified in the design process, or project scale could actually shrink rather than grow. So I kind of put a $10 million swing bar on that, but you know that's a swag a little bit. So $55 million been communicated in the community. A lot of work with BizRad in terms of what would that next 1% ask be, or would that delta that we're looking to fill be more through their CIP process? And working with Danny, the number we've been talking around there is at $20 million. So build on that 12 million at $8 million scale. It could even be a bigger ask if we start to roll in work expansion phase 2 type of components to it. So continue to work with BizRad on that front as part of their financing stack and CIP and 1% vote coming up in May. So a lot of legwork on funding. Ryan and I are meeting with DNRC and SRF tomorrow to talk how much money do they have to loan. So SRF is the low interest rate loan program. initial conversations is they can support $20 million scale, but it's what is on the table to mitigate their risk and bond against and so forth. So that's the focus tomorrow. And we also teed up Gallatin County to contribute in a more substantive fashion. The number we've kind of started with there is $10 million. The avenues for that $10 million component of the financing stack are general obligation bonds, special assessment, and TED TIF is really the thing that BizRad has been pushing on. So exploring that and continue to watch for grant opportunities. And I do have engineering permitting update, but I figured I'll pause with funding, given that's a big component.
We do have this nice graphic back here for display. Now, kind of outlines everything that we're doing down the canyon. This is what we used last week in all of our discussions about the canyon discussion. We've got the outlines for the lift station and tentative pipelines and stuff. So the next phase is moving into 60% design and moving forward. So we'll have updates every month for the foreseeable future as we move this forward. So,
and to build off that figure, what Johnny just pointed out, that $55 million number is essentially assuming Bighorn down to Bucks T4 collection, including what we call service area 4 between the highway and the river. That's a separate lateral and potentially a small lift station or force main, and we're working through those nuances. And the Highway 64 corridor, so the 2 lift stations plus line up and line down reuse discharge line. The number around that one is about 20 million, and we're working through some pinch points. But just to visualize kind of the scale of that phase 1 project and or that $55 million number kind of lives. So see Brian looking at me like there's a question coming.
I'll steal the show. Anybody have any questions? I do, but I'm gonna let someone else go first for a change. Any? All right, after Ron's extensive presentation at the ribbon cutting last week, quite extensive, record-breaking extensive. He's on, it was good though. There were a couple questions, and I just want to confirm those questions, probably for you as much, Danny, as anyone. And it was, so the resort tax and the 1% in particular are both up, they're bolted together through, is it 2032?
That's right.
Okay, so the 2 of those are bolted together. I think there was a little bit of a confusion about when Ron said, and 1% for Canyon, this and that. We're not talking about an additional 1%. We're talking about basically retiring components of it that would basically dovetail the Canyon into it.
Correct, a continuation.
Yeah, and it was just kind of that nuance to it on what was going on there.
Yeah, one of the things, so the electorate put the original 3% in place, then back in 2019, the legislative session allowed for an additional 1% for infrastructure. We put that in place in 2020 for 2 projects. So it was the MBR plant for 27 million. That gets the priority of the 2 projects that were on the ballot that was explicitly outlined, so that needs to get paid off first. And so now at a point where we're starting to sequence, okay, what's the next phase of projects we'd be looking at? We know we have $12 million that were committed from the electorate. We know that that's not enough to move this particular project forward. So when we move to the ballot in May, we're just going to need to clean all that up and basically say, I don't know how the language will look yet, but basically, okay, 12 million wasn't enough to accomplish the project. A new vote will then go in for probably this project and a suite of a few other projects as well, kind of stacking the remaining 1% for infrastructure trajectory for the next 10 or 15 years, however long it takes to pay those projects off.
It just maybe as a clarification, the only component that the district controls is the pipeline to the canyon. Is that correct?
Correct.
So in other words, the district has been funded, their portion includes pipeline to the canyon, then the canyon picks it up with their 12 million from there.
Yep.
Okay. Again, I think it's great that it's going to be kind of a checkpoint moving forward.
Yep.
And where you are in May, but I think there was a little confusion there just on how this dovetails, and it seems to go really well when you start looking at this and say, all right, it's 2024, you have till 2032. At what point are you budgeting? And you're getting pretty good trend lines going where you'd be retiring the component of, for the district and maybe implementing more a weighted average towards the canyon then. Got it. Good recap. Thank you. Henry.
Sit down to Bighorn, what do you, is that all the way down to the school?
So-
On Bighorn.
I call Bighorn Center the north side of the very upper end. I don't know if that's the correct term, but that's what I run. Yeah.
Always been.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then all the way to the school.
Our $55 million budget is getting us to Bucks T4. It's kind of a gap zone between the school and Bucks T4 in terms of who's annexed. To go to the school will be a bigger number. And if we can connect the dots with that bigger number and get more annexation through there, we will, but it's really what is economically feasible, and right now.
At this point, school's not included in those.
Right now, no.
Numbers.
And there's even a debate on Bighorn Center in terms of your bang for the buck, in terms of how much you can grab there. So you gotta cross the river again. So that, my guess is that would be one of the first ones to chop out if we can't connect the funding dots.
So still work on the annexation to get towards the school?
Yeah, yep, no, we're gonna continue to get as many landowner parcels involved as possible, and
you know, what a great opportunity sitting here, Danny, seeing what Adam shared. And as we near closure with this, that it's quantitative now for the BizRat. It's not, we're just gonna do this and upgrade the plant and it should work out. I mean, it's documented what impact this has had. And of course, that's a BizRat trophy as well.
Well, I mean, the ribbon cutting, Rod's comments were great for a swan song on that ribbon cutting, because that plant was, I mean, we worked together on this thing in a big way. I think the success of the 1%, I mean, it seems statewide now. You know, water and sewer is one of the most challenging components to fund in the state of Montana, as we're looking at financing mechanisms, and without that, like, we'd be in a tough position. Yeah, so thankful to be thinking about the next phase.
Interlocal agreement, if Mike's still on, shout out for Mike Duke and I, is a key component to it, so great. It's a good ending. So.
And I do have engineering permitting update if you want to pivot off of dollars. So
Let's just say we have plenty of time today, so have at it, you know.
So on engineering permitting, like Scott said, we're kind of at the 30% design phase present day, and we're progressing towards a 60% design. The objective there is to get design documentation in place to secure a contractor mid-design or at that 60% design point. And with that contractor on board, you can start to refine some of these logistics on navigating the 64 corridor and costs, and then also the benefit of, you have a contractor indirectly secured in terms of we're not going out to bid last minute, and we're navigating all those variables and costs in parallel with all the permitting and annexation and funding. So the goal there is a 60% design progression over what the schedule I've laid out for the Canyon District is about a 6-month span to get to 60% design, and potentially start that contractor procurement process 3 months from now, maybe at that 6-month point. But in the next 6 months, a lot happening. A key component of that contractor procurement process is what entity contracts, and what we've been discussing with the joint committee, Big Sky Water and Sewer District representative and Canyon District representatives, is the joint power authority. Can we form something that this is a group commitment, and what is that structure, rather than the Canyon District doing their thing, Big Sky Water and Sewer District getting gradually up to speed, and Al and Jared are tracking, but potentially forming that joint power authority as the mechanism to basically contract and fund and treat this project as one package and a joint obligation or joint effort. So more to come on that joint power authority. That's in the Canyon District's court to kind of look through the MCAs and work with our attorney, and then ultimately turn it over to Big Sky Water and Sewer District and Susan and thinking through it from your perspective. So that's all in motion.
The Reese and the Canyon plan, is that all groundwater injection still that process there?
With land application. So we've got groundwater discharge plan on Lazy J and Quarry, using existing drain field on Lazy J plus planned drain fields on Quarry. To pick up some of the delta, we were planning originally using some of Ramshorn's drain field, but to pick up that delta, knowing that they're a swing, irrigation throughout the Quarry and some intermittent on the Lazy J, so a combo attack there as well. But no surface water discharge, and we're evaluating some focus areas for groundwater discharge. Ramshorn was a great meat bucket, but if they're not in the mix, we kind of ignore them for the time being. If you go a little further south, there's some pockets where we can get rid of a lot. So we've got some plan Bs, but right now, groundwater discharge, irrigation on Quarry and Lazy J is our focus.
Well, the project is broken out to where we understand there's two pipelines, one coming up, one going back down, for this one, the discharge component, but you know, Scott, one of my questions is that the water matrix gonna suggest we need that from a discharge perspective, or we just be thinking about snowmaking or golf irrigation? I mean, how do all these things tie together to make sure we're splitting by in the right area?
You should be pursuing everything you can and having Mace, WGM and us maximize whatever we can get down there. Whether it's groundwater discharge or irrigation, you'll need it for build out of your district up here. You'll need all the above. Snowmaking at Big Sky Resort, potentially groundwater discharge at Firelight. Potentially potable reuse here and discharging the canyon. I would keep all of those paths open and try to maximize all of them.
I think we'll encompass it all in our reuse management plan. This is not on Kate's top list right now because in the last year, since she's taken it over, we're on our third revision of the draft to help include all this stuff. So we can ensure we have a plan to move forward. So, you know, going over into town center, you know, what that looks like and meeting obligations and demands and timing and how all that infrastructure is going to grow and be implemented over the next decade or so. So
it's free to see all that information before we have to make decisions on it.
And some of those are big, snowmaking and Big Sky Resort is a big project, so we can't really bank on it, you know, so in the meantime, you need to go get this lower hanging fruit, maximize it.
My pitch when it is kind of vouching for that canyon tool is that can be your downhill gravity groundwater discharge. That is your December to April, you know, you got that relief valve and you can get rid of a pile if you want to, or you can use it elsewhere if that's where the value of that water is. So look at it as every tool in the toolbox allows the Big Sky Water and Sewer District to use their water wisely. So,
I want to go back for just a second to the joint power authority that you brought up. And I think it's important for the board to understand it. If we head that direction, there's some research that needs to be done, but that would be a transition from our current committee approach, which is our committees meet, do the legwork, and then bring it back to the board and make decisions. This would be something where this board would be relinquishing authority and specific authority to that joint committee. And it makes a lot of sense because the decisions that are going to need to be made, it's going to be difficult to function if every time it has to be brought back to this board and brought to that board, and then there's questions, and then it's back and forth. I mean, the things, I don't want it to sound like things won't be properly analyzed, but the decision making is going to need to happen. Some of those meetings or could make the process much more efficient if we're comfortable relinquishing specific authority. So that would be, you know, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. Who would sit on that authority? Obviously, there would be representation from both districts, but it could extend beyond that. And I think, Scott, you were going to do a little research from our perspective just to better understand what that would look like as well.
I think what I owe you is probably a 1 or 2 page memo on what it is and what it could look like, at least from my viewpoint. It is kind of what you make it. So it's not what I envision. It's what that board would want to do with it. But is Susan still on?
Yep.
So my thought is get that 1 to 2 page description in front of legal and let them advise you, because it's really not something I should be advising, right, Susan?
I'm happy if you do my job.
And I don't know if Susan has a gut reaction to joint powers authorities or not, but
I can tell you the one you sent to the Canyon District is for airport authorities, so that one doesn't work.
oh,
Tara got that.
okay.
We're on it.
Okay.
That was a quick Google session, so.
And I don't want us to necessarily analyze it now, I just wanted to let the board know, because we kind of touched on it, but it was discussed quite a bit in that meeting, to the point where we thought, the group thought we need to do some more homework on this, but I didn't want to surprise anyone later to say, oh, I didn't realize that's what you were talking.
But it makes sense what you said.
The potential.
You know, it's global in nature, not individual for the district, you know, the big sky water and sewer. Now it's basically a cooperative approach. So yes, you'll relinquish some of the authority, but maybe you retain a consent level along the way, you know, that it's not so much you're making the decision, but there's a consent at a certain level.
Yeah. And then what we discussed at the joint committee is you can really isolate it to, this is a project driven authority, nothing more. So, yeah, how do you make it into what you're comfortable? So
You start looking at that map, it's understandable.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't have to tell it to you guys, the Canyon District, the joint committee, and Fisher Ave. I can tell it to one group.
Okay. Anything else? Up? Oh, I'd like to bring that up. All right.
Brian is on.
So now we are on
Our rate study.
study update.
Brian, are you ready to share your screen?
Yep, I think I have. Oh, there we go. Continue. So thank you for having me today. We've been working over the last couple of months to get some updated potential rate recommendations for you guys. Working with Johnny and Terry pretty closely to try and kind of narrow it down. What the goal of through those discussions, what they've been looking at, how we establish rates, is making sure that the rate increases that come from that are really driven by the new capital requirements that are needed within the district, growing the fund for repair and replacement of existing capital, and then also looking to make sure that the operating reserve is healthy for the district itself. Similarly, when we have been kind of tweaking the increased percentage numbers, we've been looking at trying to maintain or at least get back to that historic 60-40 split of revenue between fixed and variable. So the per gallon charge versus the monthly charge that, or in your case, quarterly charge, right? That doesn't change. As part of the process, we took the FY 24-25 budget, kind of divided it between the water and the sewer share, and then used that as our baseline budget moving forward.
Well,
we did pull updated, and I apologize, the numbers didn't quite get all justified in the same spot here, but we did pull updated meters data for the water and sewer side. We are, as we look forward to how much revenue these will generate, we are present 4% growth rate right now. And that's fairly consistent with what we're doing internally on the reuse management plan, or the disposal plan, and some of the other ones that Scott and his team are working on for you. The one kind of maybe caveat is there's a difference in the flows between the water and sewer based on how those are billed. But overall in the account, as I was going through it, I did recognize that at some point, I at least lost the ability to differentiate what was within the sewer district versus what was within the water district. So there's probably a slight variability based on that. But I think order of magnitude, we still, it doesn't really impact the results terribly much. On the water side, this is how the usage is broken out between the different user classes. We do have, just so as a reminder, different size tiers depending on if you're residential or you fall under that commercial or irrigation class. And then moving forward, these are our projections on the overall budget on the operating side. This includes kind of their share of the general and administrative. We did note that there was a decrease in personnel costs there with Ron's retirement moving into FY26 and how that could potentially get filled or not filled, right? And I guess Terry's retirement too at the end of full year FY25 as well. But there we also have it broken then into the general admin expense and the water plant operations. And then I did pull out that depreciation line item that does get cash funded there. So you grow from just under 3, and then with that drop, kind of getting back up to a little over 3 by the end of the FY29, and that's based on general 3 to 5% escalation factors. Similarly, we did get an updated capital improvement plan on the water side. It includes the $1 million placeholder for new capital projects. And then that R&R placeholder is just set to equal that depreciation reserve that you are putting away. So by FY29, you'd be spending about earmarking either in reserves or in yeah, I apologize. It's a little bit smaller, but either that or actual projects or reserves for repair and replacement throughout the system. In total, it's between around 4 to 4.5 or so million for total expense projections. And then just, sorry, as I was looking at my other screen, just kind of a quick summary here of the build flows that we are projecting, and then that meter growth based on that 4% growth rate. So in order to fund the expenses as needed, what we do have then are our water rate projections here. We would have, there are about 25% rate increases in the mid-year, and then growing from there throughout FY28. And in conversations with Johnny, it was that these would look as the maximum, and then with things like capital, if not as much capital spent in a current year, the maximum rates wouldn't have to necessarily be adopted on any annual basis, and it could be revisited to a lower amount if needed. What that does then is would project total revenue between by FY29 about 4.7 million. And this is where it would be coming from. A lot of the condo is your biggest user class from that perspective. We do have the base versus consumption split is still working towards that 60-40 on the water. It still has a little bit ways to go though in order to actually achieve it in the future. And so we do have on an annual basis looking at the over under that still would be running a deficit in FY25. But you do include that $1 million capital placeholder. So if that's something that just isn't spent in this year, then that would you wouldn't be running a deficit at that point either. But then in the future years, running a surplus to help improve the cash balances of the district, targeting that 3 to 4.5 million for 12 to 18 month operating reserve. I wouldn't anticipate, even with those healthy surpluses, that you would get to that operating reserve in the time frame, but just be working towards it. On the sewer side, jumping ahead, then we've got usage presented a little bit differently, just because we have winter quarters versus non-winter quarters usage. We look at the winter quarter itself, and then we just basically double it based on how the charges work. In total, you're at about 157 to 150, and then growing to about 200 million gallons by the 2029 timeframe. On the budget side, the biggest, I think, item here is that the growing of the cash funded depreciation from the current amount today based on the plant, and then based on projected capital improvements to about 3 million by the end of the 29 planning period. And then this is what we currently have for how I have the capital improvement budget set up. Again, having that kind of R&R placeholder equal to that depreciation reserve amount. And this does include 10 million for disposal, as well as 23 million on phase 2 expansion. So here, though, we'd have expense projections growing from about 8.5 on the sewer side to about a little over 11 by FY29, including the capital and the R&R. Roughly similar growth rate projections again. Just quick note again that one of the main differences, it doesn't also include the YC water flows. And you see the reduced flows because of that winter quarter aspect. And so here, in order to be able to fund those identified expenses, we need quite a bit more of a sewer rate increase, growing from the $37 a month now, which roughly $120 a quarter, to over $150 a month, or $450 a quarter by 29. That would then generate these identified revenue streams based on consumption and flows. These are rate revenues. You do have outside other revenues, including, and I think I have that on the next slide, plant investment charges and the miscellaneous revenue, which does include the resort tax. And so over this time period, you also have a little bit of a deficiency in the first year, followed by replenishing your surpluses and reserves after that. And you would be able to achieve your operating reserve target of between that 6 and 9 million based on these projected surpluses at the time. And with that, that's what I had for you today.
Wow. That sewer, is it only me, or I mean, it's staggering?
Did that go from 37 to
46%? I think.
I mean,
Ryan, quick question related to that. Am I understanding correctly that in your model, it would be the district fully absorbing the cost of the 23 million phase 2 expansion? And that if you were getting participation, then that would decrease those rate increases that Brian's talking about?
Yeah, so in talks with Johnny and Terry, we wanted to model the worst case scenario, which is, I think, fully that cost being fully carried by the district itself. And so that, I think there is some, so these are worst case scenario, right? I think there is some room, but there's kind of a lot of levers from your standpoint that as you're looking at these, that you could probably bring them down considerably depending on which ones you want to pull. But this includes fully funding all of the capital the district has planned at this point and reserve replacements. But I think that by FY29, those are considerable rates. That's a lot of money because it's, yeah.
Questioning your approach, I think that's the right way to handle it, but I just wanted to point that out and make sure, as we're looking at that, we understand that would be, if some of the things that we may be considering to help with that aren't an option.
This is overwhelming, this suicide. This is absolutely, I'd ask you, Terry, is this exponentially greater than any increase we've seen historically?
Historically, yes.
Okay.
Yes, but the new plant that we built is 4 times the price of the original plant.
Understood.
And so,
And
and the staffing required to make and operate it has doubled. And we may need more operators down the road as well, based on how operations go.
no question, I just look at it and say this will be one of the biggest shocks, I think, to the community on a regular basis that we've ever seen. And I was just making notes, and correct me if I'm wrong on some of this, you know, I looked at it and said, first of all, can you circulate your presentation, or can you get that to John and get it to us?
Yeah, well, so we're gonna have, this is our, what Amy has put together to help tell the story to the community and the ratepayers. It's kind of modeled after your property tax bill and stuff, kind of just breaks it out. But we have to tell this story. For many reasons, you know, a lot of the feedback we've gotten over the last year, and also to set us up for how we're gonna operate in the future. So, you know, you've seen the CIP and then, you know, the operating reserves. And then the idea is, you know, we just built this new plant. Life expectancy of membranes are, you know, 10 to 15 years if we get them taken care of. So you start encumbering that money in the CIP. So when that time comes to pull the trigger, you're not having to worry about full funding at that time because you've done your due diligence in the time frame that you have to accumulate and reserve money for those big projects. So that's how we demonstrate our standalone and you know, when we put these projects out, it really defines, hey, yeah, this is, we're at our capacity through rates and we've done everything we can possibly do. So now, you know, we need other financial venues to help, or, you know, to source stuff out.
So that's fully funding depreciation. And also, what's the percentage of that increase that's related to capital versus operations? Because like Al's point, you got 40 million in CapEx inside of that rate, you know, study. And you know, Terry, you pointed on the operations side. I'd love to know the differential. Like, what is the increase related to the new plants and the operations compared to the capital? I think there's going to be other solutions for the capital. So this is sort of scary to look at right now, but the reality of it is there's other mechanisms and ways we can go about funding.
I think, yeah, I agree. And that was one of my first things, you know, depreciation. I look at this and I just say, this is staggering. And this isn't the expectation that I had in 2020 when we were talking about what the next decade would be. And I'm all for this, of saying this is where it goes. But I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to dissect this and say, what are the needs? What are the wants? I'm interested in the $1 million annual capital in each one of these areas. If we don't know what we need it for, and I'd ask the board to do this, consider need versus want, and consider the trending from 2020 when we basically really took off with this plan in all those areas moving forward. I think that a rate increase needs to consider, you know, first of all, it's based on fiscal discipline and the expenses our needs, not necessarily wants in some cases. And the revenue support, you have to evaluate anomalies on both. This is overwhelming. I can't imagine, especially in the commercial side, which I think I wrote down, it's 9 now, it's gonna be 22 per thousand. And that's the hardest part for me on some of this, is saying, we have had such strong financial support from BizRat and all these different mechanisms in place, yet we have to go to a rate increase like this. Now they're gonna say, we gotta talk about the accounting practices. Are there other options? I'd ask Ryan, I guess you just gave us a proposal. It seems to be the extreme proposal, because I can't imagine it being any higher. Is there a better proposal to feather this in the community? I mean, people are fatigued by, just a reminder, taxes are coming out again. And I think people are going to be in shock once again with that. But this is a major burden to put on people if there are other options out there to feather this in moving forward.
I guess maybe to answer, I think you were directing that to me, Brian, but I think it's hard because a lot of what goes into rates are policy decisions. And so as you think about how the board wants to approach the policy of fully funding depreciation from a cash perspective, or how much you want to have on hand for the district, those are levers I think you have to balance between the raw numbers of what it would take to accomplish that versus the impact that you have as the board members making those decisions.
I think another board decision, I'm going to keep saying need and want, I've used this through the years. Is there really a need right now to start on the phase 2? I mean, the flows were incredibly low. I look at that every meeting. I got it, we have to project out, but is there a need to hit people with this aggressive rate increase with a CapEx in there for phase 2, especially what you just said, Al? If we need a phase 2, we're going to go to partnerships for that phase 2 for expansion, because we're covered right now. Why would it be out spending millions? I don't get the $1 million a year place card for projects that we don't have specific identification for. Am I missing something there?
I think that's part of the capital.
That's part of the capital improvement, and that $1 million covers 3 categories. So that's your water, your sewer, and then also your reuse obligations. So I wanted, you build your CapEx into your rates, because you got to have a funding source. So when we go put these projects together, we have X amount of dollars to project 2, which helps us determine, hey, if this is outside what we can fund it with, then it triggers us to go look for other sources, which was at the tail end of that.
So place carding $1 million is basically just building a war chest for those capital.
Yeah. Okay. So you have 2025, 2026, you outline that out. So, you have on the sewer side, you have, cleaning and inspection and repair. So all of our category 5s, we start putting on that list to, tackle those over time. So that component is broke out. We know it's our funding source of it. So at the end, when we have, here's the sewer district, is a project that we can take the BizRad for application, or SRF, or general obligation, or how do we fill that gap? So like the booster station's a $6 million project. This is, that's a huge number that would take us years to get the funds if we were to put that in CIP. And it's a project that we're looking at doing here in the next couple of years. The Canyon District is, they're looking to break ground in 2027. Yes, we have capacity in the current plant now, but you got to keep in mind our current obligations. So we're at 50% flow. They're promising 200. So that automatically takes you, if we get that at 200, almost up to that 80%, where we actually start looking at expanding. So in the next 5 years, things that we would typically look at 10 or 15 years out are being moved up because of these other projects that are coming in. So
it's just hard to digest. We haven't finished the plant upgrade we have over here anymore. Talking about capital for the next day.
I think you could probably bump that project
definitely 1 year, if not 2 years.
I'm thinking 3, but
Maybe 3. I mean, it just depends on how fast these developments.
I was gonna say, we'll be gathering data. Again, this has just been a wake up. And again, I'm not opposing, I'm just saying there's better options. That to me, if you educate the ratepayers on what they're gonna be paying in 5 years, you're gonna have tremendous resistance. And, just,
Well, I just want to make sure I understand, is this the recommendation or is this a work in progress?
no, this is a work in progress. So, we've had many discussions about how to phase it in. We've got funding with the new plant that requires certain obligations to be met. So, worst case scenario, you load it up to the front 3 years, or do you take it 5 years? You just got to remember at this point in time, we're in a deficit. We approved a deficit in the budget last year, and we've got to make those adjustments to overcome that. So that's, we're presenting the worst case scenario, rate increase at the beginning of the year, and then again in July, and then annually after that for the next 5 years. But how do you want to break it up? Does it have to be $1 million in that pool? I just said $1 million because we're covering a lot of categories, and I want to make sure that we're not falling much further behind in our infrastructure as it keeps growing. I mean, we've got 30-some QRVs, and, we've got aging infrastructure that, has been in place for 50 years that we need to address. We've got to make sure we're adding to the system adequately. You got regulation in there. I mean, we got water regulation. We have no idea what it's going to bring us. It could bring additional.
water didn't shock me. Water didn't shock me. I'm trying to be specific for giving AE2S direction moving forward. They obviously, I'm assuming, Ryan, that you were given direction by Terry and Johnny, and this was the product. Personally, I'm not speaking for the rest of the board. Personally, I think we need to have other options that aren't quite as drastic, at least to evaluate. And I don't know if today's an action item on anything other than to say, hey,
no, it's
great.
It's great feedback. And, that was the plan to push to get that direction, what you want to see. So this is obviously scenario A. We can do a B and a C. I think C was the one that we originally had that we adjusted. So, I kind of was soft in the front, but it was also loaded on the back end. So it's kind of, what is the most, softest approach to that.
I think before we communicate anything, there's a lot more work that needs to go into this. And my opinion is you got, 46 million in CapEx. I think there was 12 million in depreciation. I mean, you're funding $70 million in the rate case for this study that's going to see the funding depreciation, you're funding CapEx. And I think I'd like to see a differential on operations, what that is, what the rate increases would look like, just taking that into consideration. Then also just what the rate increase would look like from a CapEx perspective. I think there's going to be other solutions for CapEx. Maybe that's an A or a B, I don't even know, but this is, as we pointed out, this is like a worst case scenario right now. And it's unfair to communicate a worst case scenario to the community. So I'd rather just take some time to digest what's there and what's real. And I totally recognize the new plan, not discounting that at all. We knew there's going to be a lot more expense related to that. We actually don't even know what it is yet. We're speculating in the new operating budget, this next fiscal year operating budget. We're speculating what it's going to be. We have no idea. We're going to really know next year. And so I think that's my vote, is to try to figure out a way to sort of segment these out and look at it those lenses.
How about that's exactly, you captured it better than I was. Just, hey, it's early. I mean, we don't have any historical data on what we're doing. We're already talking about plan number 2. I think we have to agree on maybe 3 points as a board, and that's number 1, maybe direct AE2S to provide 2 other options. Best, lean, maybe too lean. This one maybe is too aggressive, somewhere in the middle. So AE2S, and give us a recommendation on reasonable comparisons out there for ratepayers. So that'd be number 1. Number 2, really evaluate in detail what was just provided in this report. And I'm just glad we don't have to vote on anything today. But then, it isn't a home run there's not gonna be any one item we say, if we eliminate that, we're gonna be back in reasonable range. It's gonna be a lot of little things, I think, in evaluating how we're preparing for this down the line. I just think there's a lot of fatigue out there with what people are paying. When you're saying 2.5 times the amount, it just seems after we've been marching forward with our water rates and everything we're doing. We've been marching, just so everybody remembers, we've been marching for years right now with our increases, and rightfully so. I've supported that 100%. We've been marching for years. But I think it would be great to take the 2020, when we said, guys, this is what we're getting into here with everything, and say, this is what we thought it would be in 2020. This is what we're projecting in 2030, so that we can have a decade of a trend line to show people. This is what our payroll was, this is what this was, this is what we're projecting. But we don't know on this plan. So I think maybe give people the opportunity to have a breather right now. Is that, I think we need to show not just fiscal discipline to the community and BizRat and so on. I think we need to show fiscal responsibility in evaluating all options on how to get there in the community. That's all. You know, some of these commercial businesses picking up that, especially restaurants, I think. It's just hard when you load that on them. So that's just my need versus want.
What's our timeline on this?
I'm hearing we don't have one. Do we have any urgency right now to implement these rate increases? Ryan, I'm gonna ask you, do we need right now to make a decision on any of these increases? In your opinion, do we need to make a decision immediately?
Recording in progress.
Sorry, I think from that perspective, I think you have some time to kind of discuss. I know there was. I muted the task force.
You're killing us, buddy.
I think there is some time for the board to probably look at some of these options. I know there was conversations about having something take effect at the first part of the year. And we've gone through a number of iterations. I think the first iteration, I had a little bit on the water side the first part of the year, and I think we were able to kind of skip over it on the sewer side. But with this iteration, we did have, I think, pretty heavy mid-year January 1 rate increase. So there's probably some time, but I think really the key there is if it's, you know, the board looking to make kind of informed policy decisions, probably having at least maybe and I don't like to, I'm sorry if I missed, since I did miss the first part, but adding more committees, but some sort of maybe feedback mechanism before the next board meeting.
Yeah. Good call. I might have a little fatigue on committees, Al, but but the bottom line is that's exactly what I was thinking. And the fact that the board, this is the first the board's seen this, and we're looking it up on a screen. This is a substantial commitment to establish direction if we're going to go there. I know we're not making a definitive decision that it's going to be 2.5 times the amount in 2009, but this is a monumental decision on our ratepayers. And part of me is glad Jack isn't here, because I wouldn't want this reported in a way that we were we don't appear to be fiscally disciplined. This is tough.
Well, Brian, I still go back to that 23 million that's connected to the phase 2 expansion is significantly impacting this analysis. And so, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the Canyon District doesn't happen,
that gets pushed back.
Changes the timetable probably substantially to when that's necessary.
Yes.
If the Canyon District does happen, resort tax is probably a bump in some way. I'm not asking you to commit to that. I'm just saying that's the road we've talked about. And so this, I would do this exactly how they did it right now, but it's not considering that. And so that would change those numbers to where our reaction might be, yes, that's a big increase, but it's not. I mean, that's almost half Well, it is half of the CapEx, and not that the discussion is resort taxpayers that full burden, but the conversation has been that it would be some. The other thing I don't know, and I haven't had a chance to study this either, but does this study factor in, I know we've talked about a standard growth, but that brings a lot of growth with it if the Canyon District happened. And I don't know if that's factored into this as well. So there's a couple components that if things happen, could help either reduce the overall cost or spread the cost responsibility among a larger user base than what we have right now.
We're saying the same thing, exactly. And we're actually on parallel paths with Ryan giving us options based on plan A, plan B, plan C. And that would be a great layer at Al, you adding that to it. You know what, in the A, B, and C, have the canyon in or out, have these things. But what I just heard is you were thinking about a rate increase in January. That's where all of a sudden I said, wait a minute, can we just push pause and pump the brakes? Because that rate increase in January considers a lot of the data we're reviewing on only one option today. Does that make sense?
It does, that rate increase is 40%, 46%.
Yeah.
So in the mid-year increase is 46%. So I think we're.
For just the sewer side?
That's what I said, on the sewer side. So I think there's I think we don't have all the details.
I think it's, first of all, great job. You guys directed them. Thank you, Scott, for coming up. Ryan, very helpful. Needed the shock factor. Wasn't one we were going to just say, okay, let's move forward. The last thing I'd say,
I think they knew that.
Yeah, Jesus.
I'm happy to help with whatever happens this next month. I think we can definitely bump the timing of Canyon back, regardless of whether we call it self-funded or it's help. I know. But I have to take a call in the part.
Scott, grab it, don't get on out of here. We just grab on the way out. But again, we're all the same. There's no drastic. I hate to do it. You don't have to do it, Al, but we should establish a committee to look at this in a little more detail, just so that we can make up some ground in between now and the next meeting. So.
Great. I can be on that committee.
I'll do it with you. How's that?
Quickly on the rate increase, we need like a January 1st. Is there, just thinking of working back from that, is there 2 meetings, 2 approval processes to enact a rate increase?
We do it by resolution now, so it's effective immediately on the passing the resolution.
So we have a couple of months to.
Yeah, I think that. And what I thought I heard Ryan say was, it was not an immediate need, and I get it. No, but I hear you, Terry. We've always supported you, man. We've always just said yes, but this is cause to say why. This for me is cause to say why.
Well, the point of the January rate increase was to get us closer to covering our operating budget than we are now. The budget that you approved had a $2.5 million deficit, which is our revenues were $5 million last year. Our expenses this year are $7.5 million. Thus, the rate increase required is going to be steep, just to get us to cover our operating revenues or operating expenses. And in the state of Montana, depreciation is a component of your rates. So it's really, in my mind, not an option that you include depreciation in our rates. So keep that in consideration. The capital improvement, that's where we have a little more play. But the sooner we get a rate increase on the table and in the rates, the sooner we're going to be covering our expenses. So
Can we implement a rate increase in the November meeting?
I believe.
I mean, just timeline.
Yeah.
Can we? Yeah.
We can get it done by January 1st.
Great.
But then we wouldn't do it in December is what you're saying.
No, we wouldn't.
Okay, so we have till November. I think
what you could make a decision in December, it would be effective January 1st.
If we really wanted it for January, and it's not a criticism, if we wanted it in January, I wish I had this in August. I mean,
we've been working on it.
Yeah, no, that's the difference, and that's the difference, is I think we would have been poised to have it today. I think it's time for a deep dive and maybe some meetings with Ryan, Mike in particular, whether we do them through virtual meetings, whatever, but Ryan seems to have all the data for us to say. And if we had to implement, what type of rate increase would you be recommending for January then?
What we discussed was a 50% increase on the sewer and a 25% increase on the water.
50%?
Yeah. On the base charge, and then 25% increase on the usage side on the sewer.
And that's what took us to this.
Yeah, and that was put us into the blended. Yeah. And going forward, we've got similar increases down the road, but we need a significant increase as soon as possible to meet our operating expenses.
But inside the operating expenses includes lower $2 million in depreciation.
Yes.
That's cash.
Cash, so
yes.
That's putting cash in reserves to get to the 8.4 million, whatever the number was. The actual operating cost, that was about $5 million.
But the depreciation is part of our operation.
You and I are trying to separate that out.
To defend Terry a little bit, we've been stealing from our depreciation for years.
I understand.
So now that we're zero, now we're gonna say, let's borrow a little.
No, but in prior years, we've had the revenues to put away money for capital items that we need, as well as repairing, replacing everything.
What are our reserves right now, roughly?
Oh,
for operating reserve?
On the sewer side, 8.4.
That's substantial.
That's
substantial.
But we've got $100 million worth of assets
Understood.
out there.
I understand.
Which represents.
I understand. I just don't want to ram a 50% increase down, because here we are in October, and I'll meet with you, Mike, in 2 weeks from now, and we'll give Ryan some time.
Yeah.
I just don't feel comfortable with the 50% increase, because here we are in October. I don't like it. And if that whole screen was full of ratepayers, that would go out of this like a wildfire. Let's take our time. And maybe there's a compromise there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to understand.
That 8.4 million is going to evaporate, not totally evaporate. We're going to use a chunk of it between now and the end of the fiscal year on the plan.
Okay, well, these are great numbers for us to understand.
Yeah.
We need to understand the mechanics of this. You've got 8.4 million. If that's going to evaporate, Mike, you and I need to understand that and come to the board with a recommendation. I'm leaning towards more conservative now. If we have to get aggressive in the next quarter, whatever the case, 50%. Oh, that's it.
And we could do that, right? And the board could make a decision.
Yes.
Increase, a lesser increase, so at least it gets us in the right direction.
Right, but with any increase above 5%, we do need to go to the proper owners and have public hearings on it. So that's the delay. That's where we need.
That's
more
what
time. We can't just.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So I think it is tighter. It's not going to happen by January 1st.
The way we're going now.
It's not going to happen.
No.
I think that's okay.
I'd rather take our time and do it methodically. I think this board needs to understand really the details of everything that was just presented. It was a great presentation, but we need to, this board needs to understand the choices. Do we have choices in how to handle this right now? And Al, you have the best one out there. The Canyon plant, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if we could see the different options from Ryan that included without, conservative, aggressive. That's all. I think this is just, I know you worked hard on this, but we don't rush something like 50% as a board.
No, we're not asking for any decisions, and it's good direction to kick it to the budget committee, to you and Al, and we can add Mike too.
I don't need anything else to do, but I have to.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, you guys are already on.
I didn't hear Nick say a word. He used to be the BSOA man.
I'd have to go back and check my list, but I know you two are on the, because this is what it's tying into is the budget. We're getting ready to start that cycle. We have no problem taking our time. We're just, we got to take action on it. I mean, the last discussion of major rate increases was 6 years ago. So, we're a little bit behind the 8 ball and evaluating everything and what we're all thinking. So this is, just the presentation and how we need to proceed.
We've been raising rates, marching along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3%, 3%.
Yeah, we've been marching for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and we did do a 15% 2 years ago, so not this past fiscal year.
So no, we've been marching along with increases. I think that this spike, I think we're outrageous. Al, I'll be over in your office asking for advice all the time. So if I come in with, like, I know what's going on, it's because Al just told me what he's an accounting man. Okay, are we all okay with this? I don't want to be the only one to say, wow, if there are choices.
Who's on the committee? Who's gets that you?
Well, I think, I would like it to be the three of us if we can have a third.
Yes, you can have to.
On it, because I'm gonna be.
You notice I didn't volunteer you.
No, you didn't. But I'm out of commission the first 2 weeks of November, so then that's critical in this discussion, so. That way, at least 32 of you.
And you know what I like about this is, if Ryan, and I'm confident Ryan can give us some of the information we need, Mike and I can meet and we'll still not know half of what you'll know about this. So we can start playing catch up with Al. And I think we'll have a really good idea of what's going on and a recommendation for the next meeting. This was really solid report. It's just the details. So good. Okay, good. Hey, thank you, Ryan. Unless you have anything else.
That was it.
Well done.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hop to my next meeting.
All right. Susan, do we still have you?
Should I say unfortunately, yes?
Yeah. Like I said, we'll put annexation farther up next time.
No problem. Not a problem.
I think you balance in your checkbook. We don't have anything else for WGM. We don't have anything else for A2S, development and subdivisions. Anything?
No, I don't have it.
Anything there? All right, we'll jump right into legal. Spanish Peaks annexation petition.
So let me give the quick update on that, which is that we've been working on the annexation agreement, Johnny and I, and John had a meeting, and then we got some supplemental information, which I have then been in contact with Spanish Peaks attorney a couple of times, and they are now on the lead for editing the drafting on the annexation agreement. So it's making progress at the normal lawyer rate. Questions?
So, yeah, I'd just say this, Susan, last meeting, I kind of spoke for you saying each one of these will be unique. I opened the meeting with that. Once we get through, let's say, the Spanish Peaks, will that provide us with a boilerplate maybe to evaluate some of these other annexation requests, gallons-based agreement, modifications? Will it give us something that we can hopefully streamline the process now?
I think we can take that one and what we're going to be looking at Cold Smoke and put it in kind of what I would call it kind of a checklist, and my preference would be is that we would make it so that we would ask anybody who's applying to annex to fill out the further information. Are they subject to a contract? Are they in the water service area? Are they in the sewer service area? What is the density they're ultimately going to be seeking so that we can evaluate capacity? And I mean, that's probably a two-part question, because some of those developments may seek a preliminary approvals, because in the process of all of this, you need to be able to secure your water and sewer system services, and then you go back through all of the DEQ design. So depending on what's coming forward, we may be asking people to give us information on their short-term and long-term plans, adjacency, non-adjacency, distance from pipe, I mean, there's a lot of things that we could ask for that aren't required by the statute in an annexation petition that would help the board evaluate the property to be able to go through and go through kind of the criteria we talked about on the Spanish Peaks one, right? So yeah, I think we can get that developed. And I'll make sure that I engage Dick because he's my best editor. So there you go.
Yeah, good someone. One thing about cold smoke, David, I think that's helpful is you don't have to, hopefully, not deal with that gallons-based agreement approach. That streamlines the process in the conditions that you confirmed, Susan, before. So hopefully we could be somewhat on parallel paths because we don't have to check that box moving forward.
Right, because if you want to move to cold smoke, cold smoke's kind of put, and I think we need to have. I'd love you to get some information, so I would have some information because cold smoke has submitted a petition for annexation, so we need to start working on the annexation ordinance. But I understand they're also going to BizRad for funding, and so I think that's a key component for our board to understand is do they, if they're annexing and they don't get BizRad funding, what are they building? What are they not building? How much of this would be trust units, housing trust units? And I don't have that information. So any information you could gather now would be helpful for me.
Okay, so I don't want to short Spanish Peaks. I thought I saw John Olson on there or Mike Duke and I. So
yeah, I'm here, Brian.
Okay, we can close out Spanish Peaks. The goal, John, is just to, I know it seems glacial speed, but just to have progress every meeting. You heard what Susan had to say. You have the floor. Anything you'd like to add that you think would help us continue moving forward?
No, I mean, Susan's exactly right. The ball's in our court. We are reviewing the annexation agreement right now and making progress on it. Hopefully we'll have something for you guys between now and the next meeting.
Great. On to coal smoke then. Because we got a whole crew here, I think, for coal smoke. And you want to come on up, David, or whoever you'd like to, come up, maybe answer some questions for Susan. Okay. All right. Why don't you start with any updates and guy came off Community Week, big week around the Big Sky.
Yeah, it's been our
everything's
first
looking, and then Susan will probably have some questions on how to move forward.
Our first opportunity to really circulate this around the public and solicit feedback. There's a lot of excitement out there for the project. I think since we last met, we successfully obtained a zone map amendment to adjust the density around that plot a little bit to make more sense and allow us to fulfill the plan that we've got. We're kind of working on preliminary design plans right now just to see what will fit and working very closely with Resort Tax on the potential of the bond. And you want to just jump right into Susan's first question?
Sure.
So one of the beauties of the SFE agreement that was drafted in 2020 that was part of the additional 1% is it really acts as a fantastic safety net. So there's terms within the interlocal agreement that specify the use of those housing SFEs that are at the very least a baseline. And so that prohibits short-term rental for any use of the SFEs, must be limited to workforce and must have some component of what we would call capital A affordability. And capital A affordability means it is specified in an underlying agreement that runs with the land. So even if the housing trust was unable to obtain funding to purchase the land, or if the housing trust never existed to begin with, there would still be, as a safety net, that baseline delivery of product to the community that the community needs. So with the ability to purchase the land, what that enables us to do is start removing significant capital from the capital stack, and that has a direct impact on both affordability and timeline. So it allows us to deliver more affordable product faster. However, if all of that fails or didn't exist to begin with, the terms of the interlocal agreement still require, upon annexation, and the intent would be that the entire plot would utilize housing SFEs regardless of the housing trust's involvement.
If that were to happen, then the Housing Trust would certainly have a stewardship role, as we have for any deed restricted properties in the community, where the annual compliance and making sure that those rules are adhered to and so on. So even if it is only the rules in the ILA, there is still affordable, limited to workforce, permanently deed restricted product that would be delivered across the entire development. Anything that uses housing SFEs, which this entire project would, is subject to those terms. So our hope, certainly because it will enable us again to deliver more affordable product faster, is to be able to incorporate public funding into the project. But even if that fails, there's still a pretty significant benefit to the community because of the way that ILA was written. And every time I read that thing, I just think that was really, really forward thinking of this community to draft that agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add to that, yeah, no matter what, basically, all units built within that annex area would be used and in compliance with the ILA essentially. So there are no market rate units, period, end of story.
So that annexation agreement will only include ILA property.
That is correct.
Correct. It would be contingent upon allocation of the 400 or so SFEs essentially, and adding to it like the need versus want. You know, I know we already presented, but we presented on the need for community housing, and we really can represent that by looking at declining school enrollment and local business not being able to operate, and that's sort of why we're here, right? And you know, the Water and Sewer District had the vision 5 years ago to create these SFEs, and this is a great opportunity to deploy them in, you know, one fell swoop, and then look at the next phase of that. But the project is partially in the district. It is actually in place of use in terms of water, and the 600 SFEs were included in the source capacity report that was done in 2022. So we just think this is a great opportunity to try and expedite as a unique project in that it is different than every single other annexation out there. So,
Susan, how do we?
I can only write so fast, and I appreciate people who speak as fast as I do. So don't take this as criticism. There's I heard 400. I'm going to call, and I know this is the improper language, but this is how we think about them. 400 housing SFEs, and then I heard 600 units. So
the 600 SFEs were in the original pool that was outlined in the ILA. There are approximately 400 remaining.
Actually, five. Then it went to 6.
I'm trying to be general.
20% delta. Yeah.
So 600 original, approximately 400 remaining, and this project would consume almost all of the remaining.
So can you be more specific than almost always?
So there are about 389 units contemplated that are 100% deed restricted. That calculation ends up being approximately 400 SFEs out of the remaining 407 or 10 SFEs out there, essentially.
Okay, now educate me on a standpoint of, because I have to go back and reread these things every time. Who gets to determine I mean, is it the district that determines, yes, we're going to allocate 400 SFEs out of the last 407, knowing that there's 7 left? Or is that in conjunction with the resort tax? Educate me.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that. The signatories to the interlocal agreement are the Water and Sewer District and resort tax.
Oh yeah, I have it. I just haven't read it. I was trying to use you guys as a cheat. Come on.
My understanding has always been, at the end of the day, it is the Water and Sewer District's prerogative to assign SFEs. You know, there may be additional terms specified in the ILA, but my understanding has been that the final authority for final allocation rests with the district.
Okay, and so let's take that one step further, because I need to kind of flesh out what you guys are thinking from, because I want to get this in the annexation agreement so we all know what we've got going forward, right? If the district comes back and says, we're not going to give you 400 of the 407, we'll give you 200, and the other 200 would have to be at market rate. Is that what you're going to pursue?
No. You know, Susan, I feel like we have some information that'd be helpful for you. They've provided a table, the use, the site plan, and a number of things. and I'll be glad to sidebar, not to take it off their table, but sidebar with the system, the consent,
Perfect.
play. And I appreciate you trying to move forward with some of this, but I think I have a nice narrative that'll answer these questions.
Great.
Be a little more efficient for you.
I'd be more than happy to attend a subsequent meeting or anything else.
Yeah,
whatever that.
to be clear, Susan, we don't want any market rate units in this development. We want this to be 100% deed restricted and for the community. So 100% open to the community. And
Okay.
types, again, to reiterate, I know we already presented, but just to remind everyone, we're thinking about 3-bedroom, single-family homes, and then maybe studio 1 and 2-bedroom apartments is the goal. So no dorm style, open to the community, and run by the housing trust.
Okay, cool. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And we'll get
And is there anything I'm again, just to make sure that we keep these moving forward together, is there anything more? I mean, we could accept the petition, we can do the first reading, there has to be a second reading. Are those steps, you've already done the zone change, so are there steps you need from us that will keep you on your track to get moving forward? And timelines?
The goal would be to move forward without sending this out to the ratepayers, given that, you know, in theory, right, these SFEs were already voted on as part of the 1% agreement, and that was sort of where they were created. So it would be sort of a shame to send it back out to ratepayers again. And then beyond that, the goal would be to incorporate into the CIP with resort tax, which has a May vote, which means that really timeline is trying to get this done by January. Right. Challenged, but yes.
So, okay, so we need, so from a standpoint, you can't go out, you need this funding through resort tax to get on their CIP to build.
We don't, it's not, yes, essentially.
Okay.
Wait, to build and to buy, right?
To build and to buy, yeah.
to buy first.
To buy and then to build, correct.
Okay, and right, okay, and so, and then what happens if it doesn't go through, the resort tax doesn't pass? Does it just sit for another year to come back to the next election?
Can still build it, it's just not anywhere near where we want it to be in terms of affordability. We're not achieving our goal as a community of creating true affordability in terms of home ownership. We can create like a lot of rental product, which is great, but it's not really, and it still comply with the ILA no matter what, right? Yeah. But the goal is setting us up for success to actually deliver true affordability, which is what we need.
And as far as waiting for the following year, this is going to be a part of a greater package for infrastructure for the community to be asked on. So it's unclear strategically whether that would be possible. Like if the train leaves, we miss the caboose. You know, we don't have the ability to necessarily get back on that. So whether we could come back for a separate standalone bond vote in the following May is unknown and complicated. I'm not, do you want to speak up at all? We need to.
I really appreciate you all coming on living in my world for a minute, so thank you.
You know, Susan, I keep talking about progress. I think this is progress today, hearing, number one, that the area of regulation will be 100% subject to the ILA. Susan, that's a big topic. And I know you were putting together the checklist and the flow chart we talked about last week at the ribbon cutting. And I think we just need to try to solidify that checklist to see where this property falls into place. As I said, we keep talking about conditions of approval. You just satisfied a major condition of approval. So we'll check that box on yours on that specific case. And so Susan, not to detour it, but I think you and I can go through that checklist from just the meetings that we've been sitting through and be prepped for the next meeting to really take a bigger step forward with this.
And I got plenty of information to get working, so thank you, Brian. Yeah, I agree.
Let us know how we can help.
Yeah, and I think, but the meeting we had, that you and David and I think we laid the groundwork on, quote, the conditions, and they're not mysterious, they're common sense conditions. And they're things that are win-win conditions. So we just have to get those dialed in and start putting you in the checklist. That's it. And let's see if we can make a big jump at the next meeting. Thank you. That makes sense for everybody else?
I think so.
You scowling a little.
Oh, no, just absorb it. That's the big side out of absorb it.
You're thinking about Hutchinson getting the triggers. So, all right, anything else on it?
I think we should quit.
You quit or we quit?
No. I want to suggest that we have gone through a considerable, but discussion. I don't think we wanted to, I would hope we don't take up another topic in this meeting. I would suggest we end it. And then come back to it, because it's too much.
Okay, so you'd just like to end the coal smoke? Can we finish the new business, do you think? The new developments and subdivision from our agenda? Or?
Oh, it's like just permits, new permits.
Confused. Let's.
His wife's coming up.
Let's buzz through new development. Anything, first of all, is there anything relevant that we need to cover?
No, we just have some new
Okay,
permits.
because did you take care of getting a gift certificate for a shop?
Amy was working on that, I'll follow up on.
This is probably Shrop's last meeting, and it's got a couple of emails going around, so we just want to give him some recognition. They're being his partner for so many years, I think it would be great. We're with you, Shrop. We're going to adjourn and unless we have anything else. No. Amy, did you have something?
No. I mean, I will just say that we're finishing up Blood and Copper. We're gonna send that out. You guys saw my permits in there. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. Like,
You don't have that? Okay, hey, that's all right. All right, how about a motion to adjourn?
I'm going to adjourn.
All right, so it's Shrop's motion and we're gonna get Al in there. So we're adjourned.